The Georgia Bulldogs took care of business on Saturday with a 45-3 ho-hum victory over the outman Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles. And while you want to be careful not to draw too many definitive conclusions off of a game like that, it doesn't mean that we still did not learn more about this 2024 Georgia football team. So after taking in the game live between the hedges yesterday and going through my first rewatch of the game today, I've got 10 big takeaways from Georgia's Week 2 victory over the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles.
We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? I'm Tyler, and this is the Glory UGA podcast, brought to you by our great friends at MyBookie. And all of you die-hard Georgia fans want to go ahead and subscribe to this channel right now. We started the Glory UGA podcast, the audio side of things, 10 years ago now, as an outlet where the most die-hard Georgia fans on planet Earth could find content designed specifically for them. And now we're bringing things over to the video side here on YouTube. So again, go ahead and subscribe to this channel right now for a lot more content like this. Like the videos, comment, and definitely check out the Glory UGA podcast, the audio side of things, for a whole lot more content designed for each and every one of you. But all right, guys, I've got my top 10 takeaways from Georgia's Week 2 victory over Tennessee Tech. I'm going to dive into those really quickly here, but first, I just want to put this out there one more time. It is important to be cautious to not allow yourself to draw too many definitive conclusions when you're talking about a game against an FCS opponent like Tennessee Tech, all right? We have to be careful of that. Still, however, saying that, there's still plenty that we can take away from this game. There's still plenty that we learned about this Georgia football team, and that is what these top 10 takeaways are designed to do today. So let's start at the top. We'll work our way down the bottom. But coming in number one, my number one takeaway from Georgia's 45-3 victory over Tennessee Tech on Saturday is that this is the best Georgia backfield since 2017. I came close to putting that out there after the Week 1 victory over Clemson. I kind of alluded to it. We talked more about Nate Frazier. But now that we have seen Trevor Etienne in action in the red and black, we've seen him at Florida. We knew what he was capable of at Florida. But now we've seen at least a little bit of him in this Georgia offense. I'm ready to go there, guys. Am I overreacting? Maybe. But I think I've seen enough at this point to go ahead and say that I do, again, believe that this is the best Georgia backfield as a group since 2017. It was great to see Trevor Etienne get out there for the first time in a Georgia uniform, and he only had 7 touches for 92 yards, 13 yards per touch. No, there wasn't a ton of usage of Trevor Etienne because we didn't need to use him all that much, but when he got opportunities, the dude made plays, including breaking off a 45-yard explosive run in the first half. So it was great to see him out there. Nate Frazier, who was the star of the game against Clemson last weekend, he did not see as many carries. He was the third back off the bench. It was Etienne, then it was Branson Robinson, there's Nate Frazier, which wasn't altogether surprising. I know some people were speculating that maybe he'll get the start after that performance against Clemson. And last week I was like, I don't think so, guys. He's still a freshman. Etienne's still going to be that guy. And Branson Robinson as a veteran in this system and what he's gone through, he's probably going to be the second guy off the bench. But Nate Frazier will get his touches, and he didn't make as big of an impact, but you still saw what Nate Frazier is capable of. And then Branson Robinson. Branson Robinson looked much better in this game against Tennessee Tech than he did a week ago against Clemson. Now, could a big part of that be the opponent? You're not playing a defense the caliber of Clemson's defense. Now you're playing an FCS opponent? Sure, absolutely. But that takes us to my second big takeaway. I thought Branson Robinson a week ago, yes, Clemson's defense is great, but I thought a week ago when he got carries early in that game, he looked a little hesitant at times, maybe a step slow, and that's to be expected, guys. I mean, it's borderline miraculous that Branson Robinson is at the point he's at right now, ready to play Week 1. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, a couple of months ago, like the early part of the summer, maybe like midsummer, where there were people speculating that this guy might not be ready to really give us any real snaps until maybe mid-season. And here he is, Week 1, taking real snaps and actually starting the game for that Georgia offense. It wasn't a vintage Branson performance, but it was a way for him to get back in the fold, kind of shake the cobwebs off, and get back to playing football in an actual game setting. But this week, while it was only a handful of touches, he still had over 8 yards per touch. They only had 5 touches total, but over 8 yards per touch. But when he got opportunities, even though they might have been few and far between, when he got opportunities on the field, I thought he looked far more explosive and far more confident than he did a week ago. That touchdown run in the second half, I know the game was well in hand, and Tennessee Tech, for all practical purposes, had probably just surrendered and given up. I understand that. But that touchdown run we saw from Branson in the second half, that was kind of vintage Branson Robinson, where he kind of sized up the DB in space, shook the DB in space, and then just put his shoulder down and powered into the end zone, kept driving those legs, which is Branson Robinson. I mean, that's quintessential Branson Robinson. So that was very encouraging to see. Again, we don't want to draw too many definitive conclusions. It was Tennessee Tech, but that was a very encouraging sign that Branson Robinson, with another game under his belt, with a few more touches, is getting closer and closer to being the Branson Robinson that we saw pre-injury, the Branson Robinson that was going to be our feature back, let's not forget, heading into the 2023 season if it was not for that injury that he suffered in fall camp leading up to last season. So I can't sit here and tell you that Branson Robinson is now the best running back on the team. I'm not going to do that. But what I can tell you is that I liked what I saw from him, and it looks like it's going to be a game-by-game thing with Branson. The more opportunities he gets, the more touches he gets, the more comfortable and confident he gets in the knee, and the more he just gets back up to speed. This guy is going to make more and more and more of an impact for this Georgia offense. And no, Nate Frazier's not going anywhere. That guy is going to get touches. He also will get better and better as the season wears on. I have no doubt about that. He's a young guy. He's a freshman who wasn't even here for spring camp. He was a guy that showed up in the summer. Trevor Etienne is going to be awesome. Will almost certainly be Georgia's featured back for all of this season. But Branson Robinson is not going to fall out of this picture. This guy is going to be a big part of this Georgia offense. And I was very excited to see him kind of take another step in this week 2 game against Tennessee Tech. All right, so that's great, right? We started off with 2 high points, 2 things that we like. But these next 2, I'm probably going to take some heat from, because I know Georgia fans out there, I get it, you're like any other fan. You want to hear people say nice things. You want people to say glowing things about your program, and when people try to suggest that maybe everything is not 100% incredible, then they're just haters, right? So maybe I'm a hater. Call me a hater if you want. That's fine. But I'm trying to be real with you guys here, trying to be objective. And Carson Beck, who I still believe is the best quarterback in the country. I would not trade Carson Beck for anyone in the country right now. But saying that, objectively speaking, through 2 weeks, I don't think that Carson Beck has been as sharp through 2 weeks in 2024 as he was the back half of the 2023 season, all right? Now, hear me out, guys. I'm not saying that Carson Beck has been subpar or Carson Beck has been garbage. His performances haven't been up to what they need to be. That's not what I'm saying. Carson has still been awesome. The numbers are still great. Look at the numbers: 70% completion percentage, 520 yards, 9 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions through 2 weeks. I think the guy just threw 5 touchdown passes to 5 different receivers, right? So you're probably saying, what are you talking about, man? Did you watch the game? Yes, I did. I was at the game. Already went through one rewatch. We'll go through another rewatch or 2 throughout the rest of this week. So this is, admittedly, probably me holding Carson Beck to an impossible standard. And if that's the case, it's just because I think that highly of Carson Beck, guys. I saw what he was capable of doing in the Georgia offense the back half of last year. The guy was unbelievable. He was 100% elite, to the point that I even said, if he comes back next year, this is going back to 2023, I said, if he comes back in 2024, this is before people were talking about this, I thought he had a legit shot to be the number 1 overall draft, because like there was no guarantee that he was going to come back for 2024. And I kept saying, like, the middle of last year, if he comes back, if you look at the QB draft class in 2024 compared to 2023, I think he's got a shot to be the number 1 overall draft pick. So I think extraordinarily highly of this guy. So am I holding him to an impossible standard? Maybe. Maybe that's the case. But here's what I'm seeing right now from Carson Beck through 2 weeks. Again, we're being nitpicky here. But Carson's accuracy and decision-making last year, if you had to pick, like, what were the 2 main areas that made him elite last year? Because I do believe he was elite last year. I would absolutely 100% pinpoint accuracy, decision-making. You can go processing in there as well, along with decision-making. And that, to me, that's what made him elite. And look, 70% completion percentage through 2 games, especially when one of those games is against what I believe still is a top 10 caliber Clemson defense. I think it'll be right around the top 10 by the end of the season. 70% completion percentage is still awesome. Again, I'm not saying Carson has been bad. That's not the case at all. He's been very, very good. He's on pace right now for 3,100 yards passing, 42 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. So it's hard to say he's been bad. That's not the case. But if you're looking at the completion percentage, you also have to factor in that through 2 weeks, he's thrown a lot of passes at or behind the line of scrimmage. We went heavy with the screen game against Clemson. We talked about that last week. We went heavy with the screen game again this week. And I would also say that Carson has uncharacteristically missed a few, not a lot, missed a few throws through 2 weeks that would have either been touchdowns or big gains. We went through this last week. I think he missed 2 touchdown passes last week. The one to Colby Young on the RPO in the end zone, that if he gets that ball down, Colby Young catches that ball, that's a touchdown. All right, that's a touchdown in the first half. And then later in that first half, he had Dominic Lovett streaking across the field on a crossing route, and he puts it on his back shoulder instead of his front shoulder. If he puts it on his front shoulder, I believe that Dominic Lovett catches that ball, gets the sideline, and scores. Based on my vantage point in the stadium, in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I think he would have scored. There's no guarantee there, but I think there's a very strong chance that Lovett would have scored. At the very least, that would have been a huge play. You go to this week's game, right? 2-minute drill, which was kind of a disaster from the start there. But 2-minute drill, when Carson was really strong last year, he was really, really good in the 2-minute drill. There was a ball to Arian Smith that Arian maybe possibly should have caught, could have caught. He could have caught it. Should have caught. I don't know if I'm ready to go that far. But Carson made that catch far more difficult than it needed to be. And that was a throw that Carson excels on. I know Carson's had, I don't want to say issues is not fair, but he hasn't been as proficient throwing the ball vertically down the field. But on those crossing routes, the dig routes, I mean, he is money on those routes. And that's essentially what Arian was running in that 2-minute drill. If he hits that play, then we at least get a field goal. And it didn't matter, right? It didn't matter as Tennessee Tech. But you know what? In a couple of weeks in Tuscaloosa, missing a throw like that might matter. That might be the difference between winning or losing a game. On the road in Austin in a couple of weeks, in a month or so, that might be the difference between winning and losing that game. When you have opportunities like that, you've got to cash them in. Especially when we talk about potential touchdowns, potential huge plays, you've got to cash those in. And Carson, by and large, last year was cashing those in. Again, he's been great. He's been really, really good. The numbers tell you that. If you watch him, he's been really good. He's also done a great job of picking up first downs with his legs when things aren't there. The decision-making, by and large, has been really good. There's just been a few throws, we're talking like 3 or 4 maybe, that I know he would love to have back, and it didn't kill us, but down the road, against some of these elite opponents that we're going to have to face, that we're going to have to beat to get in the college football playoff, he's going to have to convert on those throws. And decision-making has still, again, been largely very, very good. But there's been at least one decision in both these games, week 1 and week 2, week 1 against Clemson, and then this week against Tennessee Tech, where I'm like, Carson, I don't know, man. You're trying to force a ball in there into a spot that probably did not need to be forced into. And maybe it stands out to me because I just am stunned to see Carson Beck do those things because he just didn't really do that last year. But this week against Tennessee Tech, we were going in there trying to score a touchdown. I think we were at 14-0 in the red zone, and he's sprinting out to the right. He tried to extend the play as much as he could, and he probably should have just thrown the ball away. But he tried to fit the ball in there, throw it a little bit back across the middle of the field, across his body, and the ball did not get picked off, but it could have been. Now, is part of that the fact that we're playing Tennessee Tech and Carson realizes there's a much greater margin for error against an opponent like that than there will be moving forward against teams like Alabama and Texas and Ole Miss and Tennessee? Is part of that going through his mind? Sure, yeah, probably. But I still don't want him to get in the habit of making decisions like that. Again, it's not a problem right now. It's not a major problem. But I'm seeing him do some things these first 2 weeks that he really wasn't doing at, I would say, the back half of the 2023 season. So I got to put that out there, guys. I know some of you are gonna give me some blowback on that. That's fine. I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm just trying to be objective and be real with you. What's going through my mind when I'm watching the game live, when I'm going back and doing the rewatch. These are things going through my mind. So I got to put them out there and just kind of be as objective as I possibly can with you guys. All right. This one I almost certainly am going to get some hate for, because anytime I mention Gunnar Stockton and I don't sit here and just tell everyone, oh yeah, I'm 1,000% sure he's going to be like the next Carson Beck, then people come for me, man. They come for me guns blazing. And that's fine. That's fine. But let's talk about Gunnar Stockton here, because he got a good bit of run in this game, more than he ever has at any point in his Georgia career. And what I saw from Gunnar Stockton is a lot of the same things that I've seen from Gunnar Stockton when I've gotten opportunities to see the guy play at the college level. And I've watched this guy play a ton going back to high school guys when he was at Rabun County, all right? I'm very familiar with Gunnar Stockton's games. But when you look at Gunnar Stockton, I think honestly, a lot of the same things I'm saying about Carson Beck, I think you can say a lot of the same things about Gunnar Stockton right now in what we've seen from him in 2 weeks. Now, he didn't play much at all against Clemson, but he got, again, a good bit of run against Tennessee Tech. The numbers are solid. Like Carson, the numbers are solid. If you just look at the numbers, you're like, yeah, he's playing well, man. He's fine. Like, no big deal. I mean, he's 10 to 12 right now for 90 yards. But also like Carson, even to an even greater degree than Carson Beck, he's not pushing the ball vertically down the field really at all right now. I know he had a couple big gains in the passing game. I think there was one nice throw to Cole Spear, but then there was a 21-yard catch and run by Scovie White. It was a screen. So we're not really seeing Gunnar Stockton push the ball down the field right now. And there was a play in particular when he got an opportunity in the third quarter, another pass to Cole Spear, where Cole Spear had a touchdown, man. Like he had a step or two on the defender, and if he puts the ball out there in the middle of the field and lets him go run under it, that is a touchdown. But he underthrew Spear badly with an absolute duck of a pass. And maybe this is a situation where it's kind of taking on an outsized importance in my mind right now because we have such a small sample size with Gunnar Stockton. But when I see a guy running open like Cole Spear was for a potential touchdown, and look, Carson Beck has missed some of those throws. Every quarterback missed some of those throws. Those shots down the field, they're lower percentage throws for a reason. But you didn't even give the guy a chance, man. And you guys know what I'm talking about. If you go back and rewatch it, like the ball was just wobbling. It's like, did the ball get tipped? You go back and rewatch it? No. He had a relatively clean pocket, got to step into it. The way the ball just came off his hand, I mean, it was just wobbling. It was a dead duck, man, from the word go. So you see things like that, it's like, all right, I know 10 to 12, I mean, that looks good, but you're throwing a lot of screens, a lot of balls behind the line of scrimmage, a lot of short passes. You're not really pushing the ball down the field. And this is kind of where I've been with Gunnar Stockton. I'm not sitting here right now telling you that Gunnar Stockton cannot be the guy next year or in the future for Georgia. I'm not telling you that because we haven't seen enough of him for me to be able to definitively say that. I can't say that with a straight face. I don't know right now. But I'm also saying that I haven't seen anything yet from Gunnar Stockton that tells me he can definitively be the guy. So I can't tell you that he can't, but I also can't tell you with a straight face that he can. He's going to be the guy next year for Georgia. What I do feel confident saying here is that if you look at where Gunnar Stockton is right now and you compare that to where Carson Beck was in his third year in the system, go back to like when Carson Beck was running the offense against Oregon, when he got a lot of run in that game, we were blowing Oregon out in the first game of the season in 2022. He's nowhere near where Carson Beck was in his third year in our system. So to just expect him to be able to take the reins from Carson Beck next year without skipping a beat, I don't know if I've seen enough for me to say that, yes, I believe that. I hope to God that's the case, man. I want to root for Gunnar Stockton. I say this almost every time I talk about him. I love the guy. I want to root for him. He's a Georgia kid. He stuck it out. I want good things to happen for him. I want him to be the guy. I want him to be the next Carson Beck. I want him to continue that quarterback lineage. That's what I want, ideally. But if I'm being objective with you guys here, again, haven't seen a ton of him. So I can't tell you he just can't be the guy. But when I've had opportunities to see him, whether it's a G-Day, isolated moments in games, whether it's the Orange Bowl, we saw him in obviously yesterday, and also I got to take him to practice during fall camp. Now, you hear a lot of people just rave about how Gunnar Stockton's looking in practice, but when I saw him, it was one setting. I thought I did not think it was good practice, man. I thought decision-making was very, very poor. I thought accuracy was average at best, but that was one setting. And you hear all these other people say, oh, man, in practice, he's looking good, man. He's making strides, getting better and better and better. Like, yeah, he's definitely the number two guy. And he is the number two guy right now, almost by default. But all I can tell you is what I've seen with my own two eyes. I mean, other people can tell you things, but when I have had a chance to see Gunnar Stockton, I just haven't been, like, overwhelmed by him. I haven't been wowed by him. I haven't been convinced by him yet. And there's still time. There's still plenty of time for that to happen. But just being real with you guys, I haven't 100% seen it yet. I want to see it. I hope I see it. I think there's still a chance I could see it. But right now, I just haven't seen that yet. All right, let's move on here, and let's stick with the offense. We'll turn things over to the defense here in a minute. Let's talk about Dominic Lovett for a minute, guys. Dominic Lovett is a guy that I think should be probably the top weapon in the Georgia passing game. Arian Smith right now is getting the most touches. He's getting the most looks in the passing game. But I think Dominic Lovett can be that guy. I know he can because he was that guy at Missouri in 2022. And he's getting some looks in our passing game right now. He's got 6 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. He got that touchdown against Tennessee Tech. Nice catch there at the on the sideline of the end zone. But what we're seeing from Dominic Lovett right now is a guy that's being utilized in that short to intermediate game, the RPO game, the screen game, almost exclusively. We're not really giving this guy a shot to make explosive plays vertically down the field. He had one shot on a slot fade against Clemson where he was like, they're just basically mauling him down the sideline and they were just letting him play and didn't call it. And he still probably should have called it, got his hands on it, just couldn't come down with the catch. But I love Mike Bobo, and I know a lot of people out there are Mike Bobo haters. I am not a Mike Bobo hater. I guess you could call me a Mike Bobo supporter. I think he's a far better offensive coordinator than a lot of people want to give him credit for. I think a lot of people who are Mike Bobo haters still to this day hold 2008 and 9 against him. Well, he's a far different coordinator than he was back then. Was there a time where it was probably fair to criticize him and he was struggling at times? Yeah, sure. But by the time he left Georgia in his first tenure as our OC, that guy was maybe the best OC Georgia had. I mean, he produced the best offenses Georgia had in the program's history to that point. Come in last year, I know you kind of built off what Todd Monken was able to do. You produced a top 5 offense, like almost across the board. Whatever statistical category you want to talk about, top 5 offense across the board. But it doesn't mean that he's above reproach, right? I do think that we need to make better usage of Dominic Lovett. If I had to criticize Mike Bobo for one thing, going back to last year and now through 2 weeks this year, is what are we doing with Dominic Lovett? I understand that this guy is electric in space. Get the guy the ball in space, let the man go to work, make people miss. He made a guy look absolutely foolish out there yesterday, just basically left the guy's pants on the floor. But that's not all he can do. Yes, he can do that. But if you go back and look at what Dominic Lovett did in 2022 as the featured guy in that Missouri offense, this guy was making explosive play after explosive play vertically down the field. I mean, I did an entire film session study of this during the offseason, guys. He can absolutely do it. When he got opportunities to do it last year in our offense, when Brock and Ladd were banged up, he produced, he delivered in that role. So I don't know why we're not getting him more involved down the field. Now, does some of it have to do with, okay, we're playing Tennessee Tech, so we don't want to unveil the entire offense? Yeah, maybe, probably to a degree. But we didn't just play Clemson. And we were struggling to move the ball in that first half. So were we just holding things back against Clemson, a top 15 opponent? I don't know if that's necessarily the case, man. I want to see us use Lovett in a way that can create more explosive plays. Because I think he's that kind of guy. I know he is. I've seen him do it. And without Brock Bowers, without Ladd McConkey, we need players to step up and pick up the slack, create those explosive plays in our passing game. We know that Arian Smith can do that. I know that Dominic Lovett can do that. We just don't really give enough opportunities, and I think that needs to change. That needs to change moving forward, because when given that opportunity, the guy is going to produce. If you get him mashed up in the slot on a linebacker and a safety, he's going to win the vast majority of those in one-on-one situations. So when he gets those looks, we need to give him opportunities to make those plays down the field and still use him in the RPO game, still use him in the screen game, but that's only going to make him even more effective because we have to play off of him more than they are right now. So that's my question right now about our offensive scheme right now is how are we using Dominic Lovett? I think we need to revisit that and find ways to try to create more explosive plays with Lovett down the field. All right, so enough about the Georgia offense. Now let's flip things over to the defensive side of the ball. And I got to start with who I think was the player of the game for Georgia in this game against Tennessee Tech, at least on the defensive side of the ball. And that is Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. This is a guy we've talked about a lot throughout the offseason. A guy that is a fringe 5-star recruit, depending on what service you looked at. Some services had him as a 5-star, some had him as a high 4-star, but a very highly touted guy coming out of high school. And when he first got to Georgia, he was behind some studs, man. You're behind Trayvon Walker. You're behind Mykel Williams, right? But he's always been a talented guy. Always been talented. But beside the fact that he was behind those talented players, he also has been dealing with injuries. Like last year, he made his debut against Florida, and he was still banged up the back half of last year. In fact, had that surgery in the offseason, missed spring practice because of that. But now he's healthy. And this guy is showing us what he's capable of. He's now living up to that fringe 5-star, high 4-star high school recruiting hype. And this guy had 3 tackles for loss. He had 3 tackles for loss against Tennessee Tech. And look, I know it's Tennessee Tech. It's not Alabama's offensive line. Although if you watch that game against South Florida, the Alabama offensive line did not look the part this week, man. It's not Texas' offensive line, which does look the part right now. I understand that. But this guy, what he really gives us on the edge is 2 things. It's kind of a combo. He has the size and strength to hold up effectively, setting the edge from that 5-tech position, but he's also got that first step quickness and just overall athleticism to be able to penetrate in the backfield and disrupt, create negative plays. And we're allowing him to do that right now. I mean, he was getting in the backfield with regularity against Tennessee Tech and making plays with regularity against Tennessee Tech. And he played, now he didn't have the tackles for loss that he had against Tennessee Tech when we played Clemson week 1, but he still made an impact in that game. He's strong. Like, that was one of the issues we had last year, guys, defending the run. We know that we were not as good overall against the run last year, but it was the perimeter run game more than anything that killed us. And Tyrann Dawkins being ready to, being healthy and living up to his potential, getting close to that is an absolute huge shot in the arm to this Georgia defense and our ability to defend the perimeter run game. He also, if you watch that game closely against Tennessee Tech, it's well documented. We talk about a lot here on this podcast. We are banged up on the interior of our defensive line. And with Michael Williams, we're banged up on the defensive line in general right now. We had a lot of guys. We had basically 3 guys play all the snaps against Clemson. It was Christian Miller, it was Nas Stackhouse, and it was Tyrann Dawkins, more or less. Like, they played essentially 30 snaps plus each in that game against Clemson. They played at a very high level despite having to play more snaps than we're probably comfortable with them playing. So with Warren Brinson now out in this game, hopefully back next week, we'll see. We needed to find a way to give Christian Miller, to give Nas Stackhouse a breather here or there. But right now, we just don't have the bodies except for true freshmen. And we want to get those guys reps, and we did. They played pretty well, especially Jordan Thomas. But you want to see what we can do with a guy like Tyrann Dawkins. And so there were situations there, not a ton, but there were situations where we're playing our mid front, and he would slide down, and he kind of play a 3-tech a little bit. And his ability to do that with his size, his strength, his athleticism, that combination, that is very valuable to a Georgia defensive front right now that has talent, but all that talent is very, very much banged up. So going into a game against Kentucky, which I know Kentucky looked bad last week, guys, very, very bad. But that's still Kentucky team that's, if you saw what Brock Vandagriff looked like, they're going to want to run the football. They run the football 19 straight times in the second quarter against South Carolina. 19 straight times. That's what they did. They're going to try to run the football at us, guys, especially when you consider the issues that we have with the injuries on the defensive front. We're going to need Tyrann Dawkins to play at that same level against Kentucky. And look, we should be Kentucky. I understand all of that, yes. But they're going to try to be physical and run the ball at us and wear our depleted defensive front down. And if he can play some reps a lot of reps at 5-tech, but also slide down and give us some reps at the 3-tech, I think that will be a huge benefit for the Georgia defense against a Kentucky team that is going to try to run the ball right at us next weekend. But love what I'm seeing from Tyrann Dawkins, and that guy is going to be a big part of our Georgia defense all season long. Sticking with the defensive line, Christian Miller, guys. So I did an episode kind of, I guess, right as we were really getting this channel going, right around the start of spring practice. And that was right around where Christian Miller, right after spring practice, announces, all right, I'm going to the portal. And I'm like, oh my God, no, because I love Christian Miller. I know last year, he wasn't our best defensive lineman last year, but you could see the signs of him having the potential to grow into, to develop into the best defensive lineman on our team. So I did a video essentially saying we need this guy to come back because I think he can be the best defensive lineman on our team. And then, people want to come and they want to come take shots and say well, do you not know who Warren Brinson is? Yeah, I know who Warren Brinson is. I know Warren was better than him last year. I'm talking about down the road, as early as maybe this year. I love Christian Miller. He's to me, I've said this many times on the podcast, so if you're new to the podcast, you might not have heard me say this, but Christian Miller reminds me a lot of Tyler Clark in the early Kirby Smart era, where, he's a guy that really, he's more like a true one-gapper. He's a 3-tech guy. The body type, and it's not even just like the body type, body size, body frame. It's just like even the way they move and walk around out there, and also their skill set, what their strengths are. Those guys both guys, Clark and Christian Miller, have elite first tech quickness. They both play with elite leverage. Not the biggest guys out there, maybe not the most powerful guys out there, but when they play with the leverage that they do, they can hold the point of attack very, very effectively, and they have that penetrating ability to be disruptive in the backfield. And we saw that time and time again from Christian Miller a year ago, even though he was largely playing out of position, playing the 0-tech for us, when he's really a true 3-tech, at least in terms from a body standpoint. Well, now that he's playing 3-tech with Warren Brinson out and Jordan Hall out, he's playing that more natural position, and the guy's doing exactly what I thought he would do when given those opportunities. He's making plays, man. Even the plays, like, he's not the one, maybe the one getting credit for the tackle. He's in the backfield. He's routinely winning his reps. He's regularly winning rep after rep after rep. And yeah, I know Tennessee Tech, he should win those reps, but he was winning those reps against Clemson as well. And you might not think that highly of the Clemson offensive line. And look, I don't think the Clemson offensive line is elite either, but it's still probably the best Clemson offensive line we've seen in 5, 6, 7 years or so. All right, still a good, solid, very veteran Clemson offensive line. And I thought that Christian Miller, playing all the snaps he had to play in that game against Clemson, was winning reps on a regular basis against Clemson. I don't see any reason why that is going to slow down, especially when we get some of these bodies back. It looks like hopefully Warren Brinson will be back this week against Kentucky. Jordan Hall apparently is getting closer and closer. I'm not ready to say he's going to play against Kentucky, but it sounds like it's maybe a better shot than there was a couple of weeks ago. But as we get healthier and healthier, and he doesn't have to play as many snaps, the snaps that he is out there on the field, he's going to be able to make even more of an impact because he is going to be fresh. So love what I'm seeing from Christian Miller. He is showing signs of becoming that guy for us on the interior of our defensive line. And you go back to last year, it's kind of what I was saying all last year. We were good on the defensive line. We just weren't elite on the defensive line. However, I felt all last year that the guys that had the highest potential, that had the potential to truly be elite for our defensive line, were the younger guys who just weren't ready. The Christian Millers, the Jordan Halls of the world. Those are the guys that had the potential, they had the ceilings that are higher than that of Warren Brinson, who's a really good player, but just maybe not have that long-term ceiling. A guy like Nas Stackhouse, they were just young. They just weren't ready. We need to see them take that step. And so far, through 2 games, against one, I think, very good opponent and one, obviously, overpowered FCS opponent, I think we're starting to see signs of Christian Miller becoming that kind of guy on the Georgia defense. Will he ever be a Jalen Carter type guy? No, probably not. I mean, those guys are extraordinarily rare. But I think he can be a guy that can be a major problem for SEC offenses on the interior of the Georgia defensive line. I think he's showing signs of becoming that guy. All right, my next one here, number 8 on my list. I have been raving about the Georgia inside linebacker room, I don't know, man, for 3 or 4 years now. It's been a long time, all right? And coming this season, when I did my Georgia football position unit rankings earlier in the offseason, going back to like probably late June, I had the inside linebacker room rated very highly. Now, the one thing that you could say about them that wasn't glowing was that there's not a ton of experience. What I felt was, from a talent standpoint, just a pure raw talent standpoint, I don't know if there's a more talented overall room on the entire Georgia roster. There just isn't a ton of experience. You have Smile Munnon, who's played a lot. You have C.J. Allen and Ray Wilson, who played a fair amount, a good amount, certainly the last half of last year as true freshmen. But outside of that, you don't have a ton of experience. Jalen Walker's played some, but not really all that much an inside linebacker in his career coming this year. And you have 2 really talented guys in Chris Cole and Justin Williams, who I think the world of, but they haven't played a snap. They're true freshmen. And Troy Bowles, as a redshirt freshman, hasn't played a ton for Georgia. Love what I've seen from him when he's got opportunities, but hasn't played a ton. But when you look at the talent, like just the raw talent, it's like, man, it's overwhelming in that room. But here's what I'm ready to say now. I know it's only 2 weeks, so maybe it's overreaction, maybe, whatever. But I am ready to say this. I'm not sure that there is a more talented overall position room in the entire country than Georgia's inside linebacker room. And guys, it's not me trying to make put a hot take out there. That's not what I'm trying to do. I truly believe that. I know there's some really talented rooms out there across America. But if you look at just the pure raw talent in that Georgia inside linebacker room, I don't know, man. I do not know if there is a more talented room anywhere else in the United States of America on any roster. I just don't know, man. Like, you're going to have to prove it to me. You're going to have to show me. Like, tell me what that room is that's more talented than that Georgia inside linebacker. You got Smile Munden, who's got all SEC, potential All-American type talent. CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson have All-American talent. And then Jalen Walker, I think, also has All-American talent. Even though he might not be a full-time inside linebacker, he's playing a lot of inside linebacker for us now, guys. He's also moving around, playing some jack for us, which was where he started with Michael Williams out in this game against Tennessee Tech. But he's still playing some inside linebacker, playing from depth there. He's rushing the passer on third downs, so a lot of different things. He's got that versatility, but he's playing inside linebacker. I think that guy's going to have, I've said before, I'll say it again, I think he's going to have double-digit sacks this year. The first guy in the Kirby Smart era to do that on a Georgia defense. And then I mentioned Chris Cole and Justin Williams, true freshmen. I know they haven't played a ton yet, and we're talking about very, very small sample size, but that small sample size has been incredibly impressive, both of those guys. Their natural instincts, their size, their physicality, their athleticism. I mean, these guys, like, off the charts. Like, they are can't-miss guys. Like, those are the next two. Those are the next two. So you're going to have, Smiles gone after this year. Going to have one more year of CJ Raylan, and Jalen might be gone for this year too. We'll see what kind of year he has. He could go. This is his third year. He could go to the NFL. But I'm very, very confident that when it's their turn, Justin Williams and Chris Cole are going to be absolute nightmares for opposing offenses. Those guys are the real deal. So it might sound hyperbolic, and maybe it is a little bit of an overreaction. I don't know, but I truly believe it, guys. I wouldn't put it out there if I did not truly believe it. I do believe that this Georgia inside linebacker room is the most talented single position room in the entire country. All right, number 9 here. Got 2 more for you guys. All right, KJ Bolden. We're all excited about KJ Bolden. Big 5-star guy. We flipped from Florida State late. Get him from Beaufort High School, school that we just never really get guys from. For whatever reason, we just can't get anybody. Dylan Raiola, we all know how that goes. And the list goes on years and years back, right? But we got KJ Bolden, and we were all extraordinarily excited about what this guy could do. There were some people suggesting that maybe he could start as early as week 1. And even I was saying, like, this not crazy. It's possible. But, you got Dan Jackson there, who's a veteran and has done some good things in the Georgia defense. And KJ Bolden doesn't start against Clemson. Didn't start against Tennessee Tech, but he's out there very, very early and played a ton of snaps in both of those games. And I do believe that there's a strong possibility that KJ Bolden will ultimately end up taking that starting job from Dan Jackson. KJ just athletically, physically, it's just a different level, right? However, saying that, as much as I love KJ Bolden, as good as he's looked in his first 2 games at the college level, and he has looked fantastic, guys. Made some great plays against Clemson, had that sack early in the game in the first quarter against Tennessee Tech. The guy's a ridiculous athlete, man. He's a future All-American type guy, 100%. But saying that, Dan Jackson is not going down without a fight, guys. And he might not be able to hold off KJ because KJ is just a different kind of athlete. That very well may be the case. We saw that once already with Malachi Starks. But I'm telling you right now, guys, Dan Jackson, even if he does end up losing that starting job to KJ Bolden, this guy is still going to be a big part of the Georgia defense. He's playing at a really high level. If there's anybody but KJ Bolden back there, there would be no talk about Dan Jackson being beaten out for a job in the middle of the season because Dan Jackson is playing at a really high level. He was flying around the field against Clemson. Same thing against Tennessee Tech. This guy's closing speed. I mean, is he KJ Bolden? Is he Malachi Starks? No. But this guy is such a better athlete that people don't give him credit for. Just put the tape on, guys. His ability to run the lanes from the safety position and get downhill, close on ball carriers, it's maybe not elite, but he is a very, very effective safety for Georgia. At the very least, he's going to remain a part of this defense in third down packages. But look, as much as I believe in KJ Bolden and think there's a strong chance he could take that job, I'm not convinced it's 100% going to happen because I do think that Dan Jackson is right now through 2 weeks playing at a really, really high level. And he's going to make it tough. He's going to make it tough on the coaches. KJ's making it tough on the coaches to keep him off the field because he's that good. But Dan's making it really tough for the coaches to put KJ over him because Dan, again, knows the system, is a much better athlete, a much better player than the average person wants to give him credit for. They see walk on and they're like, he's fine, but KJ's just much better. Yeah, KJ is just a different level athlete, sure. But it's not like Dan can't play himself. Dan can play, and he's going to make it hard, man. He is not going to go down with a fight based off what I've seen through the first 2 weeks of this season. All right, finally, guys, I saved this one for last because I don't like talking about this. This is not fun. It sucks, but it's got to be fixed. We're 2-0, massive win against what I still think is a very good Clemson team. Did you guys see what Clemson did to Appalachian State? Like, what? I mean, App State is supposed to be one of the best G5 teams in the country, and Clemson just absolutely walloped them, like did to them things that Clemson just hasn't done in a long time to anybody. I mean, Kate Clemson had like 350 yards passing in the first half. What? Just where'd that come from? I still believe in that Clemson team. I didn't see them doing that to Appalachian State. So I think that's a good football team. But look, guys, the penalty situation, we got to fix that, y'all. That is not okay. 16 penalties through 2 games. 16 penalties for 155 yards. That ranks us currently through 2 games 15th out of 16 teams in the SEC. That ranks us 105th nationally in penalties. That is not Georgia football. That is not a Kirby Smart disciplined football team. And look, we were just that much better than Tennessee Tech that it just didn't matter at all. But we probably should have beaten them 60-3 if it wasn't for some, or 62-3 or whatever it would have been if it wasn't for some of those penalties. Like, penalties took points off the board at times for us. In that 2-minute drill, we start that drive off against Tennessee Tech at the end of the first half with a false start by Ernest Green. Put you behind the chains there. So we've got to fix that. We're 2-0 and it hasn't hurt us yet. But if we continue to play that undisciplined style of football, when we go to Tuscaloosa, when we go to Austin, when we go to Oxford, when we play Tennessee at home in November, that could cost us. Again, that could be the difference between winning and losing games. Just like Carson Beck missing a throw they should make could be the difference between winning and losing a game against an elite opponent. Those kind of penalties could cost you games, could cost you points. You cannot do those kind of things. And I know it's only 2 weeks, so I don't want to say it's a trend yet, but it's been 2 weeks, guys. It's been 2 weeks. 16 penalties, 155 yards. That needs to be fixed, and that needs to be fixed this week. That is unacceptable. We will not win national championship if we cannot get that under control. And maybe I'm overreacting here. It's only 2 weeks, but that is not a statistic you want to throw out there. That is not Georgia football. We got to get that under control. And I have faith that Kirby Smart will get that under control. And it's the first 2 weeks of the season, so you may be wearing some rust off. I don't know. But whatever the reason is, we've got to get that under control if we want to beat the teams that we got to beat to win a national championship in 2024. But all right, guys, that's all I got for you today. That's my top 10 takeaways from Georgia's 45-3 victory over Tennessee Tech in week 2. It's on to Kentucky this week, guys. So we have a lot of coverage the rest of the week previewing this Georgia-Kentucky matchup, Georgia's SEC opener in Lexington. So make sure to check all that stuff out. Again, here on this channel, subscribe right now, but also check out the Glory UJ podcast, the audio side of things. We have 4 episodes a week for you guys on the audio side of things during the football season, so you don't want to miss any of that. Check that out, guys. But thank you for being here. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.